everybody, welcome back to episode number 6 of my series, What Were They Thinking?, where I take licks, riffs, little sections of solos from players I really admire and parts that were really influential to me, and I try to get into the heads of the players that played them and try to maybe see what they were thinking. So today you just heard me play a really fast run from the incredible Steve Vai's The Attitude song from his Flexibles album. Now this song, when I first heard it, just knocked me for a loop. Absolutely amazing. When it came to this run, I was probably 11, 12 years old when I heard this, and I just couldn't even fathom what he was doing at the time. What's interesting about the Attitude song solo is that it's not played over top of any chords. Every so often the drums kind of double what Steve does, but there's really no bass, there's no chords underneath it. So Steve is kind of creating the harmonic structure through his solo. He starts it off with the... However that goes, I probably didn't even play that right, but it really seems like he starts off in kind of an E minor pentatonic blues scale. So a lot of kind of E minor pentatonic-y blues playing throughout it. But now when he gets to this run, we really don't have any sort of harmonic backdrop for it. So what this run is slowly is this. So let's break that down. What he's really basing the vast majority of this run off of is the D major scale. Now, we could think of that as D major, we could think of it as E Dorian. We could think of it a bunch of ways because there's no real chord being played behind it. I mean, the fact that he starts on the D note maybe sets it up to give our ear that D sound, but if the rest of the solo is kind of creating more of an E tonality, it would be more Dorian. Whatever we want to think of it as is not really that important because it's not being played over top of anything. So we are just running up this pattern of the D major scale. Later on, he extends it out up higher into a different position. So we see where those notes are coming from, and then he just sequences those. So how does he sequence those? He's playing 16th note groups of 6, okay? So it's quite fast and pretty crazy to get the picking. And he is picking the vast majority of this, except for one little hammer-on pull-off sequence later on. So he starts off by climbing the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with the notes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. He continues up for the next group of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he reaches up to this higher C sharp and then climbs backwards. So it's up 6, and then he hits one more note climbing up and then sort of reverses before starting an ascent again. And you'll see that up on the screen on the tabs. So this is the type of thing you can do to practice this, is just take small sections and really take them into smaller groups and work on each section until you can get it up to speed. Keep working on that until you can get it cleanly and quickly and mindful of your picking. The way that I pick that might be different than a lot of folks. I go down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, up. And then continue from there. And that's the whole run. So where does he go after that? Well, he has those 6 notes climbing up. One more climb before going descending and then ascending again. Now, he starts here on the C sharp again. He does a neat little sequence. He goes on the C sharp on the 11th fret on the 4th string, back to the A and the B, 12th fret and 14th fret on the 5th string, before kind of continuing that run upwards. Okay, C sharp, D, E. Okay, now he continues that run up even more. He does a similar thing to when he reached the C sharp here, except he goes to the F sharp, does the same pattern, sort of descending before ascending again, and still just following this pattern, which is our D major pattern. So far we have this. Okay, then he does the same thing he did to start another pattern. And this is where it's going to change though. So we had this. He's doing the same thing here, except on F sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. So far slowly the whole thing is this. Really nice stuff, and not as hard as it looks once you practice it slowly, get those notes under your fingers and the picking that you're going to use for it. Some folks would strictly alternate pick that, I'm sure, and it would work just fine. Whatever's going to suit your style of playing and gets you the results you want is great. Okay, so we're through that first just running up of the D major E Dorian scale. Now he shifts up, and we get into a little bit of chromatic playing now. You'll notice that there's 4 quick notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have those notated as 30-second notes, so that's where the hammer-on pull-off comes in. Okay, so we do a quick hammer-on pull-off, still from our D major scale. So this is where it gets interesting after that, we go back to the groups of 6th and 16th notes. So we have an A, a G sharp, a G, and then back up to our D at the 15th fret and G. So really still just our D major, B minor, E Dorian, whatever you want to think of it as. But he is getting in here and playing a G sharp passing note, so a chromatic note, sticking back to the scale. Now this is where it gets really interesting, and he goes very chromatic. So he really climbs down from C sharp, C, B, B flat, A sharp, A, G sharp, G, E, D sharp. So using some notes from the D major scale, obviously. So the C not being in there, the A sharp not being in there, G sharp not being in there, and the D sharp not being in there. So, okay, so really that's just Steve embellishing things with the chromatic scale. Because he's not playing over any particular chord, he can kind of get away with whatever he wants here. So far the whole thing was this. Now we're leading into another chromatic idea, but this time he's actually using little chord shapes. And the shapes you'll see are these. And that's how I think of this, is just sweeping these chord shapes. Okay, now you might say, well, what are those shapes? The 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th chords he does are just these. E major, F major, F sharp major, G major. Now the reverse sort of inverted finger shapes he uses for the first, third, fifth, and seventh chords could be thought of a couple ways, really. I mean, if you thought of this as the root and the fourth and the fifth, you could have like a little sus4 chord. So this would be like a G sharp sus4. But I also tend to think of this more as a dominant chord with E being the root, even though it's not being played. We'd have our flat seventh, our third, and then our sixth or our 13th in this case. So this would almost be like a little dominant 13th. E dominant 13th, F dominant 13th, F sharp dominant 13th, and then G dominant 13th. And that would kind of work with the fact that the next chord is an E chord here. So he goes. If we had started on the major chord, it would have set us up for that E major tonality and then brought us back to that dominant 13th chord. So I tend to think of this as alternating between a dominant 13th and then a major triad, and then just climb that up chromatically. If we just look at that on the tab as the numbers and we don't see shapes that are going to work, that's going to make things very difficult for us to get our head around. But when we see this shape, and the fact that we can kind of pivot around this middle finger. Although I wouldn't play it like that because I find keeping in motion and getting your fingers moving helps with that. Keeping it down would just be very sloppy. And awkward. So getting it in motion, just being aware of that as a pivot point. Okay, so that's essentially what he's doing there. And then he finally ends the run off with back to the D major, E Dorian, whatever you want to think of it as, starting on the A note, 14th fret on the third string. 14, 16, 18, 15, 17, 19. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp. Going all the way up to the G note, 15th fret high E string, climbing back down to a similar pattern he did here. Except starting on the G this time. So that whole run. So the entire thing slowly then would be this. And he does end it off with that, but that's for another time. So that's what I think Steve was thinking. Because he didn't have any harmonic structure to play over, other than what was going on in his head, he was free to add these chromatic notes in, create his own little chord structure, really right from the notes he was playing, just because he had a drum groove behind him. So very, very cool stuff. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode 6 of What Were They Thinking. Please let me know what you think of this series. I hope you're enjoying it. It's a lot of fun to do, and I've had a lot of good feedback from folks about it. A lot of people thanking me for doing it and telling me that they're understanding these licks a little bit better after doing the little analysis on them. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get enjoyment out of watching it, and just help me spread the word about the new series. Subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I will be back very soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.